Update. I refused to give free legal advice to my friend and her boyfriend. Friend's boyfriend went nuts. Original post. I, 27, female, just want some perspective on this. Throwaway for obvious reasons. A bit of background info. Julie, also 27, female, is a good friend from school. We used to be close but have drifted apart and don't see each other as much as we used to. John, 32, male, is her boyfriend. We used to be close, but he has been cold toward me recently. They have both opened a business, and I am a lawyer at a decent-sized firm. A few days ago, I got a text from my good friend Julie out of the blue, wanting to meet up. I was thrilled because Julie has bailed the last couple of times I've organized things. We met up, but the whole time Julie kept fishing for free legal advice about her business, which I politely refused. I refused for many reasons. She sought advice in an area of law I have minimal experience in. It goes against the conditions of my practicing license. What she wanted me to do would take up most of my limited free time, and in my jurisdiction, there are rules and many warnings against giving free legal advice to the friends and family. It has the potential to ruin my career, a career I have just begun. I also don't want to mix my professional and personal life. The area of law I practice in is emotionally draining and intensive. I love it, but for the purposes of self-preservation, I want my spare time to be work-free. While I am more than happy to lend a sympathetic ear to friends, I find it a bit much to continuously put on my lawyer hat and provide solutions, opinions, and free legal advice to everyone who asks. It's not a nice feeling to know you're being taken advantage of. I politely refused Julie and told her that I really wasn't comfortable giving away free legal advice, but if she wanted recommendations, I would gladly provide her with a list of capable lawyers. She said it was okay, and we had a meaningful chat. It was really pleasant to be able to speak to her again. Last night, I was at a catch-up dinner with a couple of friends and our significant others. Julie and John happened to be there and were giving me the cold shoulder. I ignored it for most of the night until we took our seats at the table. John started making snide remarks about lawyers, the usual stereotypes. I laughed it off, as did everyone else. However, things took a turn for the worse, and his comments became nasty and personal. He said horrible things, like I must be sleeping my way to the top, that I must have connections to have gotten my job, that I am unethical and lack moral virtue like all lawyers, that I am greedy, and the icing on the cake, you must not be a good lawyer because you were unable to help us with our simple legal problem. I was pretty pissed off, because who the heck does something like this over dinner? It was horrible, awkward, and just mean. I was mortified and didn't know what to say or do. I felt so small. I ended up excusing myself from the table to go cry. When I came back, I evidently looked like I had been crying, and now John was pissed, saying that I couldn't take a joke and had no sense of humor. I woke up in the morning being bombarded with text messages from John and Julie about how I am horrible, how I made them look bad, what? And how this would all have been avoided if I had just helped them in the first place. I responded and said that if I ever was going to help them, they had blown their chances based on how they had acted. John has lost the plot and has been sending me menacing messages and has threatened to ruin me. Reddit, how the heck do I handle this? Now for the top advice before reading the update. Cut contact and block them. If they continue, report them for harassment. I am so sorry your friend is doing this to you, but this is ridiculous. If she were your friend, she wouldn't be doing this. She knows you can't give legal advice like that, which makes it so ironic that John called you unethical. WTF. Also, why the heck didn't anyone stand up for you at supper? Jeez. I was a bit upset that no one stood up for me, but I think it was because everyone was really shocked. John has always presented himself as nice and as the guy everyone wants to be with. I would wash my hands of these friends if I were you. You have every right in the world to refuse to have your free time infiltrated by people close to you digging for legal advice. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't most lawyers offer free consultations? Couldn't they have just as easily made a proper appointment with you during your office hours? Hold your ground. If they wanted to shed light on this whole thing to ruin you, they would end up humiliated, and you would receive a pat on the back from your employers for 1, being loyal to their firm, and 2, being loyal and respectful to yourself. What you do is worth something, and people who come around only when they want something aren't worth gifting it to for free. If you are worried, I would bring this situation to a seasoned higher-up at the firm. Sorry if I'm a little all over the place. I'm irritated for you and a little under the weather. Thanks so much for this. It's made me feel a bit better. What annoyed me the most is how they made me out to be this super selfish, greedy a-hole who doesn't give a second thought to their friends. It's offensive because I am nothing like that and have done so much for them in the past. Heck, the only reason John is living in my country is because I wrote an amazing stat deck about him and his relationship. What they want me to do is freaking time-consuming and, as I said, out of my area of expertise. I don't want to finish an exhausting, draining day of solving other people's problems, only to be bogged down researching and solving the problems of someone ungrateful. I guess most of all I'm pissed off because I didn't think this would end a friendship. Normally, the relationship ends after you dish out free legal advice, not before. Now for the update. So first things first, thank you so much to everyone who responded. I'm surprised that my post gained the amount of attention that it did. I honestly can't express how thankful I am for all the private messages I received expressing concern. It's nice to know that there are some really awesome people out there who care enough to listen and help me in my time of need. In the original post, I expressed concern about John sending me really nasty text messages. I know a lot of people told me that I should go to the police and make a report. In the end, I decided not to. Long story short, John is not a citizen of my country and is actually going to an interview in the coming weeks, along with Julie, to cement his status as a permanent resident of my country. Part of this process involves having a squeaky clean record and full and frank disclosure of criminal activity or antisocial behavior. Since I am a character reference that I provided in a non-legal capacity and wrote a really nice letter for John, this was before all the drama. It wouldn't look good for him. I have no interest in ruining both his and Julie's lives, no matter how terrible, rude, or mean they are, so I didn't want to make a report. However, I sent one text message to both John and Julie, stating that if he did not stop harassing me, I would have no choice but to go to the police and file a formal report. I have kept copies of these text messages if needed, blocked their numbers, and gone into a social media lockdown. Regarding my professional concerns, every Monday I have a standing appointment with my supervising solicitor to debrief about work and any problems that arise. As I mentioned in the original thread, I practice in family law and deal with a lot of at-risk and vulnerable kids, most of whom are victims of abuse, so the appointment goes beyond the realm of legal work. I discussed what happened with John and Julie and asked for her professional opinion. She was actually shocked by the whole situation. I had to show her the texts to prove it actually happened. She said there is no way in the world that John and Julie could get me into trouble because I didn't do anything wrong. She also said that because she knows how hard I work and how many hours I put in, coupled with my known distaste for corporate and commercial law, she has no qualms backing me up, in the unlikely event that Julie and John try to cause professional drama. She advised me to call the Bar Association to preempt any problems, but they said I did the right thing, and that unless there is legitimate evidence proving I gave them advice or did anything wrong, I am in the clear. So it looks like I'm all good on that front. A very good friend of mine who was at the dinner where John exploded has been speaking to Julie and John and keeping me updated. My friend Jane told me that John wanted to make a formal complaint or start something. She wasn't sure of the exact details, but she shut him down and said that was in no way appropriate, acceptable, or ethical. She told him that neither she nor our circle of friends wanted anything to do with either him or Julie. Jane also listed the many times I have been there for them and how stupid they are being. After that, Jane decided she wanted nothing more to do with them. Jane told me that the reason no one intervened at the dinner party was because no one knew what to say. John has always presented himself as the nice guy and the perfect boyfriend, so his behavior was completely left field and out of character. People genuinely didn't know how to react. Julie has always spoken so highly of John, how perfect he is, how lucky she is, and how we all need to find our John. This situation brought a few odd things about him and their relationship into focus. No one's relationship is as perfect as John and Julie's appeared to be. Long story short, it made a lot of people reconsider how they viewed both of them. Someone in the original post pointed out that their outburst and insistence on help were probably symptomatic of a bigger problem, and they were correct. Around a year ago, Julie and John bought into a business. I don't know the specific details, but at the time, they approached me for legal advice, which I declined. I was in my final semester of law school, and they didn't want to pay a lawyer to draw up contracts or review documents. At that time, John was dismissive about paying for legal advice and said he was more than capable of handling it himself. Turns out he did a really terrible job. They are losing money, owe a lot of people money, have angered many people, and are generally being screwed over by a contract in place. This is what Jane told me. I feel bad for them, I really do, but there is literally nothing I can do. Yes, I am a lawyer, but as I've said time and time again, this is not my area of practice. It's like asking a cardiologist to perform a lobotomy. My expertise is family law. While I have a rudimentary knowledge of business and corporate law, the kind of advice they need is well beyond the scope of what I can provide. After much thought, even if I had the ability, I don't know if I would want to help. The sense of entitlement and blatant disrespect they've shown me has really upset me. While John has been a monumental douche, what hurts the most is Julie. She was meant to be an old friend, and it really freaking hurts. Imagine trying over and over again to meet up with a friend, only for them to continuously bail. Then, out of the blue, they finally meet up with you. But instead of exchanging pleasantries, I didn't even get a token "How are you going?" A pile of papers is thrust into your hands, followed by dozens of rapid-fire legal questions, demands to call people, requests to write carefully crafted letters on office stationery, and contracts to review. I'm not dealing with that. I don't want to finish work only to be inundated with more work. I know I've been used, but what's worse is the disrespect, the lawyer jokes that were barely disguised attacks, the assumption that she'll do a whole heap of work for us just because. How someone even gets into that mindset astonishes me. Julie hasn't bothered to speak to me, and I have no intention of speaking to her. Jane has said that Julie doesn't really show any remorse, and while she understands my reluctance to get involved, thinks I should be doing more. F her and F doing more. I've done so much for her and John. Written statements for his visa application, recommended customers to their store, helped them move house, provided a list of lawyers, and supported Julie when her grandfather passed away. More clearly means doing what they want. This has been a hard, harsh lesson, but the friend I thought I had was never really a friend. From the distance of the internet, I suggest rescinding your recommendation letter. Although you did it as part of your personal relationship, it carries more weight than a letter from a non-professional. The ethical promises and declarations you made upon becoming legally able to practice give your recommendation additional weight, and to maintain those standards, you should also rescind a declaration you can no longer honestly make. Do you really want this guy, whose bizarre, stalkerish, and potentially abusive behavior, assuming that's the uneasy feeling you're getting about their relationship, to become a legal citizen? He knows he has to behave while on a visa. Can you imagine how he'll behave once he's legal? Actions have consequences. Don't protect him from the consequences he is due. I wish I could, but unfortunately that time has passed. I wrote the letter over a year ago, when I was not a practicing solicitor and was still a law student. It is not linked to me professionally. It was done, as stated in the letter, in the context of a friend who had known the couple for an extended period of time. It was essentially a letter that spoke, in part, about John's character, who at the time I thought was a standout guy, and the legitimacy of John and Julie's relationship, which I still think is legitimate. There was no legal jargon involved. I wouldn't even know how to go about rescinding the letter because, as far as I am aware, the part of the process I was involved in has long passed. I predict that after the 2 years, or whatever it is, he needs to become permanent. He's going to dump your friend. I've seen this a few times, and his behavior throughout all of this seems very deceptive to me. Everything he does appears nice right now, except when things get bad, then he shows his true self. All of this is a big warning sign, a giant red flag. Unfortunately, I feel the same way too. They got together really quickly, and Julie got swept up in it all. All my friends felt that way at the beginning, But John wooed and charmed us all and didn't even begin the visa process until 2 years or so into the relationship, so we were all fine helping them out. Last story. My friends don't want to be around my husband anymore. How do I handle this? My husband, 38 male, and I, 32 female, have been together for 9 years and married for 5. Recently, my mother-in-law was in town, so I reached out to my best friend, 36 female, to make plans. I suggested a game night at my house since I love games and trivia, and thought it would be fun with a group. She said she was down to hang out, but it would just be her, not her husband, and she wouldn't invite any of her friends. When I asked why, she was honest. She said her friends and husband don't feel comfortable around my husband. At her Friendsgiving, my husband apparently talked badly about her friends to her husband, and after we left, several people commented on how uncomfortable he made them and that they felt bad for me. One thing she mentioned really stuck with me. At the party, I was basically asking my husband to play a game with me. He refused, which wasn't surprising to me because he never plays games with me and thinks they're immature. But she said the way it came across to others felt awkward, like he couldn't do one small thing to make me happy, and people were watching and felt uncomfortable. This was hard to hear because my husband is usually social and has a lot of friends. When we're around people who aren't his friends, he usually keeps to himself, so I didn't realize how it looked. My friend also said this isn't a one-time thing, and that she's noticed him talking over me or shutting me down over the years, but didn't want to interfere. At home, if I disagree with him, things can shut down fast, and it often feels like his way or the highway. We've been in couples counseling on and off, and we're back in it now. I'm also in individual therapy. I love my husband, and it hurts that people in my life don't want to be around him. I don't know how to bring this up without him getting defensive or asking me not to see my friend anymore. I don't know how to bring this up without him getting defensive or asking me not to see my friend anymore. If this is how you think he will react, how do you see this ever improving? Her interests are immature. He crap talks her friends. He talks over her or shuts her down. At home, he makes it feel like it's his way or the highway. If she brings up the issue, she expects him to get defensive or demand she isolate herself from her friends. This guy absolutely does not respect OP at all, and I really question whether he even likes her. Probably also why she described them not as her friends, but as her best friend's friends. Sounds like she has no one anymore besides that one friend. OP, I'm going to tell you what my therapist told me. If one person you're close with doesn't like your partner or spouse, they might just be a hater. That's fine. Some people just don't get along. But if 3 or more close people in your life don't like who you're in a relationship with and are telling you why, you should listen. That's the only advice I have. Falls under the rule, if you meet an a-hole first thing in the morning, well, bummer. If everyone you meet that day is an a-hole, you're the a-hole. Edit. Thank you all for the validating and thoughtful responses. I want to clarify that I do try to provide more detailed context when posting, but several of my longer attempts were flagged or removed, so I kept this version brief. I am in individual counseling, and when I brought this situation up in session today, without showing the post, my therapist independently agreed with many of the points raised here. We also discussed boundaries I plan to communicate in upcoming couples counseling. I still struggle with doubting my own judgment, even with outside validation, but I truly appreciate the support. I'll respond to some specific questions in the comments later tonight, hoping this edit keeps the post available. Also, since it's been locked and I can't comment back, the game night I planned at my house would have been without him. He has other plans. I specifically made sure of that and took the opportunity since he would be doing his own thing. Either way, she didn't feel comfortable inviting her friends or her husband in the event that he decided to stay home or his plans were canceled. My mother-in-law is great and very go with the flow. Our house also has a lot of space where she could stay in her own section if she wanted to,